Nation, family and friends, Bereans, I pray that all is well with you. Thanks for joining me for the broadcast here. Before I get into my message today, may I just say a couple of things to you. I don't often get a chance to say these things, but I want to thank all of you who have been praying for me and for this ministry, especially lately. As you know, for quite a while, we've been under attack by Satan. He's nearly wiped us out across the board. Not only just financially, just discouragement and different things that he's trying to do thwart all of our plans. But I want to thank all of you that have taken the time to pray for me and to pray for this ministry and to help this ministry keep afloat. As you all know, I talk to many of you across these platforms. I try to make myself available to all of you. I believe ministry, there's no off hours, there's no downtime for ministry. A minister, if at all possible, should be available. I pray with many of you. I talk with many of you. But I want to say thank you to those of you who pray for me in the ministry. I was greatly encouraged yesterday also because this ministry received 2 offerings, 2 first fruits or tithes, however you want to term it. We received 2 offerings yesterday, which greatly encouraged me, because it had been a while since we saw anything. And that encouraged me, and it just gives me the strength to keep going and keep pushing and keep serving the Lord Jesus. You too who sent in those offerings, you know who you are. And for all of those who have sent in offerings not long ago, recently, I thank God for every one of you, because every offering goes a long way. Every offering is a help, and every offering goes right back into keeping us on the air, keeping us in the pulpit, keeping us doing what God has called us to do. There's no great salary here. There's no big staff here. This is it. This is a walk of faith. So thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your financial support. Now, let's get to the message, shall we? How do you sleep at night? Do you sleep? Or do you toss and turn when things are going bad? Do you find yourself stressed out to the point where you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't focus, you can't concentrate? Circumstances seem to get on top of you. Well, I want to show, if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Mark chapter 4 today. A very familiar passage. A passage that you probably have heard preached on before. I know that I've worked through it before, but I've never come at it at this particular angle. And what I've titled my message today is Sleeping Through the Storm. Because when the storms come up in our life, when things are unsettled in our life, when we're stressed out, when we don't have answers, how we sleep determines a whole lot on where our faith is and how strong our faith is. So if you're taking notes or you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Mark chapter 4. We're going to be looking at verses, let's see here, verses 35 down through 41. It is the famous, if I can use that term, the well-known story of the storm coming up on the lake and the apostles having to get Jesus to knock the storm down. So let's go through this a little bit, and then I want to focus on one particular thing here. Let's start it here. Mark chapter 4, beginning verse 35. On that day, when evening came, this is Jesus, he said to them, these are the apostles, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took him along with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. Okay, there's our setting. Jesus had just got done preaching. If you look back in Mark chapter 4, he gave the parable of the mustard seed. He was preaching to the crowds. Well, now he was leaving with his disciples, and he was going to the other side of the sea, the other side of the lake. And curiously, and we're not going to get into this now, but there were other boats that were with Jesus at the time. There were other boats. But then the focus zeroes right in on Jesus. Now here's what's happening. Verse 37. And there arose a fierce gale of wind, a storm, and the waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling up. Now, I am not a mariner. I don't like going out in boats. I'm not really fond of the water. But for those of you who fish, those of you who go on the water, those of you who go out in boats, how scary is it for suddenly a wind to come up so badly that water is washing into the boat and it's already filling up? because you know what's going to happen next. If the water fills up too high, the boat's going to capsize. You could drown. Suddenly this vehicle, this boat that is seaworthy, is suddenly tossing and turning and could turn over, and you could drown very easily. It's a very scary situation. Now understand here, a few of these apostles already, Peter and James and John and Andrew, they were already fishermen. They already knew the conditions on the sea. They had already experienced different things as they were fishing. Maybe one night it was calm. Maybe another night a storm came up. Maybe they knew how to deal with waves and wind. But this was something different. This was something even more catastrophic than what they've ever become aware of. And the reason why is because we'll see in a couple of verses, they actually go to Jesus and they're panicked. They don't know how to handle this sudden gust of wind, this sudden storm that's coming upon them. I want you to look at this situation when we're looking at this as an historical event that happened out on the water, and compare those storms, not so much for the water in your life or when you're out on the boat, but for the storms that hit your life. When something doesn't go right, when there's a tragedy somewhere, when suddenly you don't have enough money to pay your bills at the end of the month, or a child gets sick, or you lose your spouse, or you lose a job, something happens. How do you handle it? How do I handle it? I'll give you a little insight in a little while how I handle it. But look, I want you to see, this is the main point I want you to see. We got this storm that's coming up. The boat is already filling up with water, but look, verse 38. Jesus himself was in the stern. He's in the boat, asleep on the cushion. Now, some translations say pillow. He's asleep on the cushion. He's asleep. Jesus is sleeping through a storm. He's calm. Nothing is affecting him. Water is filling into the boat. These mariners, these apostles are starting to panic. Jesus sleeping soundly, sleeping calmly in the boat. He's sleeping through the storm. Look what they do. Verse 38. They woke him and they said to him, Teacher, or Master, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? Don't you care? Now, how many times in your life and my life have we said something similar to Jesus? Jesus, don't you care about us? Don't you care that I'm suffering? Don't you care that I'm alone? Don't you care that my husband or my wife cheated on me and they left? Don't you care that my child died? Don't you care that I don't have enough money to pay my bills? Don't you care, Jesus? You see, while they're panicking, while they're letting the circumstances around them affect how they're acting and affecting their mind and affecting their body actions, we see Jesus sleeping through the storm. He's asleep. His head's on a pillow or a cushion. He's not bothered by it. Now, you may say, well, Jesus is God. Of course, he's not going to be worried because he already knows what he's going to do. Well, let's see what Jesus does and see how he teaches these disciples, these apostles, what's up. Now they wake him. They're screaming at him, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? Look what happens, verse 39. He got up, Jesus woke out of his sleep, and he rebuked the wind. He rebuked it. And he said to the sea, Hush, be still. Hush, or stop. Cease, be still. 3 words. Hush, be still. Look what happens. And the wind died down, and it became perfectly calm. Now, what are we seeing here? Yes, on the one hand, we're seeing a physical miracle. Now, you and I cannot change the elements of the earth. You and I cannot manipulate the natural order of things, but God can. You know why? Because he created it all. So Jesus, this storm is coming upon them, so much so that these experienced mariners are scared. And they wake Jesus up. Don't you care that we're perishing? Jesus got up. You notice he got up calmly. Doesn't say he rushed around. He got up. He woke up. He rebuked the wind. And he said to the sea, he talked to the sea. He talked to the water. Hush and be still. Look what happens. And the wind died down and everything was perfectly calm. Jesus solved the problem. Jesus stopped the storm. Jesus immediately said 3 words, and immediately it happened. Miracle. But see, here's what he's going to say next. Now, in verse 40, it says, Jesus said to them, these are all the guys that were panicking in the boat. Jesus said to them, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? 2 important questions. Now, I want you to think. Jesus is asking you and I, every time we panic, every time we say to God, don't you care? Every time we ask Jesus, don't you care that we're dying, or we're broke, or my marriage is in shambles, or I lost my job, or I've got a hangnail, whatever it is that we're asking Jesus, whatever it is that we're accusing him of, they're accusing Jesus of not caring about them. Don't you care that we're perishing? They're awake. Jesus is asleep. And Jesus, after he rebukes everything, he turns around and he asks them 2 questions. Why are you afraid? Jesus is asking you, and he's asking me the same thing. When things are going haywire, when we are having marital troubles, or we don't seem to have enough money at the end of the month, or things just aren't going well, when you don't get answers to prayer, Jesus is saying, why are you afraid of these things? Are we so weak in our faith that we cannot understand and comprehend and believe with our mind and our heart and our soul that Jesus can handle anything in our life? Because he says, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? These are men who saw miracles. They saw the feeding of the 5,000, the feeding of the 4,000. They saw people being brought back to death, back to life from death. They saw water turned into wine. They saw the miracles with their own eyes. They experienced it. And yet Jesus has to say to them, do you still have no faith? You still have no faith. So while Jesus was sleeping through the storm, and these men were panicking, they were showing clearly that they had no faith, or very little. They were showing that they were afraid. They were showing that even with Almighty God there with them, that somehow he didn't care about them, that somehow they were going to perish and they were going to die. I know it's the law of self-preservation. Something's happening. I need to save myself. And Jesus, since you're here and you're God and you're the Messiah, don't you even care? How could you be sleeping here in the middle of a storm? How could Jesus do it? How could he have that kind of faith, that kind of focus, that kind of calm? How could he do it? Verse 41, let's finish this passage. Then we're going to go back and talk about this a little. They became very much afraid, and they said one to another. They became skeptical of one another. Who is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? They're asking among themselves, who is this? Who says to the storm, who says to a body of water, you hush and be still immediately? Wouldn't that be amazing to actually see? We've all been around waves. We've all been down the shore, or we've been around a body of water, and water is extremely powerful. We all know that. And you see water rippling up on the shore, and then it washes back, and then it comes back again. But what happens when you have something like a flood or a tsunami? You cannot stop water. It stops itself. Water is going to keep going until it decides it's going to stop. You can put a dam up, yes, and mankind has built dams to hold water back. But eventually, those dams can break. And when that breaks, that water pours forward, and there's no way to stop it. Jesus said, hush, be still. And immediately, not only were the waves stopped, the wind stopped. It says here it became perfectly calm. Now, who else was perfectly calm during this incident? The apostles? No, Jesus was. Jesus was so calm that he was asleep on the cushion. He was asleep on the pillow. He was asleep. Wow. Okay. So let's apply this to our life here. And I'll share this with you because I do believe in being transparent. Here's something that I do, and maybe this will help you, okay? I very rarely, I think I posted this yesterday on a couple of these platforms. I don't really have restless nights unless I'm sick for some reason. Bad stomach or a cold or something like that, and you're having trouble breathing, you may toss and turn. But when I turn in the evening and I'm ready to go to sleep, I review my day, what I did during that day, how I behaved, how I reacted. Did I serve the Lord diligently? Did I slack off? Did I say things I shouldn't have said? Did I do things I shouldn't have done? What did I do that maybe was pleasing to God? What did I do that wasn't pleasing? And I review that in my mind. And I start to settle my mind down and realize that if today is my last day on earth, if today is the last day I get to lay my head down, I'm not going to spend it tossing and turning. I am not going to spend it worrying about things. I'm not going to think about things that are out of my control. I'm going to sleep through any storm that is in my life. And believe me, there's been many storms, same as with your life. Financial problems. Not enough money to pay everything. Sometimes it's a food thing. But whatever storm is going on in your life, here's the question. Can you be calm like Jesus was? Can you be calm and sleep through a storm that's happening in your life? Or do you toss and turn? Do you panic? Are you trying to pop sleeping pills to get a good night's sleep because you're so on edge? You don't know what the answer is. You don't know how to fix it. Well, the point of this is let Jesus fix it. Give it over to Jesus. And what I do is before I go to sleep, to be able to calm down, I turn everything over to Jesus. You see, if I'm here tomorrow and God gives me another day of life, then I'll deal with things tomorrow. The situation may be the same. The problem may be the same. The lack of a solution may be the same. But what I am not going to do is spend all night long tossing and turning or trying to pop sleeping pills or running to the refrigerator and eating myself half to death because I'm nervous. I have enough faith in Jesus that he's going to handle the situation. Does that mean that everything is going to turn out perfectly okay? No, of course not. That's living in a fairy tale land. Everything doesn't turn out exactly the way we want. Very often it doesn't. But what Jesus is asking the people here is two things. Number one, why are you afraid? And do you still have no faith? Jesus is asking me, Thomas, that question, and he's asking you that question. Why are you afraid when the storms of life come into your life? Why are you afraid of those things? Jesus, these things are going to happen. John 16, verse 33, I quote this often, says this, in this world you're going to have tribulation. You're going to have it. It's not a maybe, it's going to happen. But be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. Why can't we hold on to that hope? Why can't we realize that no matter what is happening in this world, no matter what is happening in our circumstances, that this is not our final destination? All of us are here for just a whisper. Oh, we're only here for the blink of an eye compared to eternity. Some of us are giving long lives. Some of us are giving short lives. The bottom line is, if this is the last video you ever see, if this is the last broadcast I ever do, then this is what has been allotted to us in our life by Almighty God. God knows when we're going to be born. He knows when we're going to die. God knows that. And so here's the point. If we spend our life and our time worrying about things, thinking about things, being afraid of things, and being restless, then every storm that comes into our life, no matter how big or no matter how small, is going to produce the same result. Panic, being afraid, being unsure, and wondering if Jesus, if God even cares about us. That's what's going to happen. And that's what we see the apostles going through. Don't you think they knew better? Don't you think that all the times that Jesus was with them and they saw the miracles, that if they took the time to think, if they took the time to look through the situation, instead of looking at their circumstances, don't you think that they would have realized, well, Jesus is here, he'll take care of it? Human nature. We get caught up in our emotions. But we see Jesus, who was fully man as well as being fully God. What do we see Jesus doing? He's laying there. He's sleeping. He's sound asleep. He's not worried. He's not letting circumstances get to him. If you read through the Gospels, and I've challenged you to do this before, if you read through the Gospels, you will never see Jesus running anywhere. You will never see Jesus in a hurry anywhere. You don't see him running. Even when they're after him, you only see Jesus where it says, he leaves through the crowd or he disappeared through the crowd. You never read anywhere in the Gospels that I'm aware of where you say, and Jesus had to run out of town in a panic because he was afraid of them. No. Jesus stood his ground. Jesus said what he had to say. He did the miracles to show who he was. He preached the gospel straight up. He preached the gospel and he told people the truth. And he was hated for it. But we don't see him running around in a panic. We don't see that. When we see Jesus, how often do we see him throughout the Gospels go up into a mountain to pray? He goes up to commune with his Father, brings a sense of peace. What's your prayer life like? Do you spend time with God where if you are anxious, if you are afraid, if you're scared of something, if you're in a panic like these people were, you don't know what to do, where do you go? Do you look at your circumstances around you? Do you fill yourself with alcohol or food or whatever else to try to compensate? Or do you just turn it over to Jesus and be able to sleep through your storm? And I challenge you with this. I know it works for me. Now, I'm not a robot. It doesn't always work the same way. Are there times that I'm overwhelmed with things? Yes. It's one of the reasons I thanked you at the beginning of this video. Thank you for praying for us. Thank you for standing by this ministry. Because that could cost me a lot of restless nights. But I know that if I'm doing what God has called me to do, that he will bless me as he sees fit. He will supply as he sees fit. He will do what it is he says he's going to do. And whatever the future is for this ministry or for me, I can lay my head down at night. Hopefully, I did the very best I could. I've sought forgiveness for my sins and my shortcomings. And I can lay my head down at night and sleep through the storm. And if I wake up tomorrow morning, I have another day to make it better, to serve God better. And who knows? Maybe the answer we're looking for will come to us in our peaceful sleep. Maybe that answer is waiting for us the minute we wake up in the morning and suddenly, it occurred to us, there's the answer. I can't tell you how many times I've prayed on something, did not get an immediate answer. Sometimes prayers lasted a long time before I got an answer. And then suddenly the answer was right there. I'm in tune with how the Holy Spirit speaks to me, so I know when it's coming from God and when it's not. Satan is the great deceiver. He will try to knock you off and he'll put you into this panic. Satan is the one that can bring those storms into your life. And if you take your eyes off Jesus, remember what happened? We look in Matthew 14. We all know that story, right? Peter was walking on the water. Jesus says, come on. And what happens? He walks on the water. And as soon as he looks at his circumstances, what happens? He starts sinking in the water and he has to cry out to Jesus. And he has to cry, and Jesus has to reach down and get him. Why? Why does that happen? Because Peter looked at his circumstances around him. He lost his faith. He lost his faith in Jesus because he started looking at the storm he was in and realized, my goodness, I'm actually walking on the water. And he started sinking. And what do you have to say? Jesus, save me. And Jesus reached down and he saved him. Okay? Now, if you hear a cat in here, this is my insistent cat that just loves to just make noise and all that. So we're going to be ending this here because he is going to try to get on camera. It never fails. We try to keep him off camera. But anyway, here is what I want to share with you. Are you able to say to yourself right now that you can sleep through the storms in your life? Can you sleep through the storms or not? There he is. See? Here's our boy. Can you sleep through the storms in your life? Or do you have restless nights? Is your hair getting gray prematurely because you're tossing and turning? Are you popping the sleeping pills because you don't know where to turn? I'm telling you, Jesus is the answer. Jesus is always our role model no matter what happens. And Jesus was sleeping through a storm. I challenge you, next time there's a storm in your life, next time there's some uncertainty in your life, turn it over to Jesus and you see what kind of peace he can bring you. Jesus told his disciples and he told us, peace I leave you, not as the world leaves you. That's not any kind of real peace. Jesus offered us the peace that passes all understanding. It's called the peace of God, passes all understanding. And so that's what I want to encourage you with today. If this message has helped you, please feel free to share it. God said in Isaiah 55:11, he said, my word will not return void. It will reach all those people he intends it to reach. So if it reached you, if it was meant for you today and you were blessed, then this was meant for you. Please share it with everyone you know. Somebody you know who's going through a storm. Somebody who's going through a time of uncertainty in their life. You share this message with them and give them the encouragement that God and only God can solve the storms in our life. Next, I'd like you to be a Berean. Those church family, if you're on board, you know we call ourselves Bereans for life. Acts 17:11 tells us that the Bereans were more noble than all others. Doesn't mean that they were smarter, doesn't mean they were better. What they did was this. They received the word that Paul and Silas preached to them with all readiness. They were eager. They were open to hear the word of God. But they didn't stop there. Acts 17:11 then says they searched the scriptures daily to make sure what they were hearing was true. I encourage you, do the same thing. Take this passage, take this message, and go through it and make sure that what you're hearing is the truth. Invest some time in the Bible. Be a diligent Berean. If all of us did that, if all of us spent more time in the Bible studying it, right, Acts 17:11, if more people studied the Bible, we'd be able to recognize when those false preachers and those false teachers come along to tell us things that have nothing to do with the Bible. And they're out there. They're out there more than ever. As we are in these last days, every day that passes, we get closer to Jesus' return. And because of that, it says all through Scripture here, all through the New Testament, false prophets, false Christs are going to arise, false teachers. They're going to try to destroy even the elect. But there are people out there, whether it's Christian television, Christian radio, especially on social media, whether you go to a church, maybe you're reading the latest bestseller from your favorite Christian author, whatever the case may be, you owe it to yourself to make sure that what you're hearing is the absolute truth. And the only way you can do that is spend time in the scriptures yourself. Be a Berean, Acts 17:11. Lastly, I will thank you again. Please continue to pray for this ministry. We need all the prayers we can get. I pray for you. I want to talk to you. I want to fellowship with you as much as I can, as often as I can. And I make myself available to many, many, many of you. And you know that. I've got to keep putting my cat down. He really wants to be on TV, you know. But please pray for our ministry. And if God would lead you to support us financially, there's a few ways you can do it. Number one, if you're watching me on Facebook right now, you can do it right quickly through Facebook Messenger. It's quick, it's easy, it's safe and secure. It takes less than a minute. If you're watching me on any other program, you can also do it through PayPal. Living in Harmony, capital L, capital H, all one word, living in harmony @mail.com. I will post those for you. You could also send a PayPal payment to us if you feel led to support us. We also have a mail option if you want to mail something in. If you don't, and if God doesn't convict you, it's perfectly okay. This is not a ministry where you have to pay to get a prophecy. You don't have to pay me to pray for you. You don't have to send in an offering for me to welcome you into our family. That's not how this ministry works. But all ministries need money to operate on, all of them. So please pray for us. And if God has you support us, wonderful. And if not financially, at least keep us in your prayers. I want to thank you for being with me today. God bless you.